All right, all right. Welcome back, everybody. I think it's been a while, right? I think it's been like 2, 3 months, maybe. We're in the depth of the bear market, but things don't actually look that bad. So I think today we're going to have a pretty exciting AMA. All of you have asked a lot of great questions. And so we'll, like the second part of this session today will be the AMA. I think the first part we'll talk a little bit about the market and what has been happening. So I can also give you guys some sort of like feedback and reflections on crypto, on Iota, and where we are headed, basically. So I think I'm not sure how you guys are experiencing this market, but I need to give some very honest feedback that I actually prefer bear markets more than bull markets. you're gonna hate me, right? And of course, like I'm 99% in Iota, right? So your pain is my pain. But quite frankly, like operating in a bear market is very different, because in a bull market, you're basically supposed to chase like these unsustainable, I don't know, milestones, unsustainable announcements, just to be able to keep up with the rest of the market, right? And if a meme coin chases past you on coin market cap rankings, you're like, what the fuck is happening here, right? We have to do something. Can the devs do something? And so I think like especially the last bull market was really riddled with announcements upon announcements and like this really fierce competition, like it is overcrowded market, right? Some recently launched projects had like hundreds of millions of dollars in fully diluted value without actually having a shipped product. And honestly, I think that was simply unsustainable, right? Also from the mental health perspective, just being able to keep up with everything that's been happening, and like a majority of it was bullshit, right? We can be very frank here. So I think my first and honest feedback with all of you is that I think that the current market environment is much better, right? We basically washed out a lot of the bad narrative-driven projects that simply were not sustainable. When is the last time you heard about the metaverse or a metaverse coin? So I'm not saying that the metaverse is not the future. I'm just saying that it was one of those really crazy hyped buzzwords of the last bull market that didn't meet the crack, right? And all those projects are down 90-95% as well. And we had to go through a very painful process of deleveraging, like what has been happening with Celsius, what has been happening with Three Arrows Capital. Just today, Voyager had to file for bankruptcy. So I think in total, there has been around 5 or 6 bankruptcies just so far. So that's kind of crazy to watch unfold as well. It just shows you I don't know, how some projects, how some teams in this space haven't done proper risk management with their treasuries and have really just bet it all like a casino. Like we always say that we are in a casino here, and the casino always wins. But in some cases, the casinos, right, the centralized sort of DeFi projects actually failed. So I think we've seen a lot of the bullshit being washed out, and now we are starting to really go back into the mode of figuring out what actually has a future, right? In a bull market, it's very difficult to understand what has a future, because you're just being too crowded with all these different buzzwords, where everybody tells you like this is it, right? This is the next big thing, and you're chasing dreams that are simply just dreams, right? Now it's time to prove really what is happening and really prove what the future is. And that brings us to Iota. And what I can tell you guys is like the last couple of months have been very productive for us, because we were really deep down focused on shipping Stardust and making sure that we deliver the Shimmer network as soon as possible. So today we'll talk a little bit about the updates and also about timelines. But we didn't waste the bear market, right? We really made sure that we made good use of the time, and to also reposition ourselves in this market and never waste a crisis, so to say. One of my favorite memes that I wanted to show you is actually this one by Kobe, where it just shows you the current environment that we're in, right? If you think that crypto is bad, crypto is just like partly infected from this global macro crisis that we're seeing unfold right now, where nobody really knows what to do. Like even the Federal Reserve is consistently every quarter wrong, and maybe they're even gonna get us into a much worse situation. But I think the end, like the main summary of all of this is nobody fucking knows, right? Nobody knows what is happening next, and the only thing that we can do is prepare ourselves in the best way possible and really make sure that we stay focused and that we're guided with sort of like this long-term vision of the future. And this long-term vision of the future is actually something that I've been thinking about a lot in regards to crypto, because fundamentally, Iota always sort of had this antithesis in the crypto market, right? We were like orthogonal to blockchain, right? We were sort of like the anti-blockchain project where we said we are improving blockchain significantly from a technology standpoint, and we also had a very different thesis of how to drive adoption of the future for crypto. And the crazy DeFi yield that has been going on about in the last bull market, right, where you basically just airdrop the token with the new token and it created some form of yield out of that. I think most of that has been proven unsustainable, right? And so now, especially I think in this market, we with Iota can prove that there's more sustainable ways to drive the adoption of crypto. And of course, that actually includes us doing more crypto stuff, like doing DeFi, like doing NFTs. But I think we have to think about it differently, right? It's not about creating tokens, doing crazy airdrops of worthless tokens and hoping that it somehow generates value. But it's really about creating proven business models that generate revenues, that generate income, and that you can properly actually assess, right, from a valuation standpoint. So I think we at the Iota Foundation, with the Iota community, can really go into this market now in a much stronger position and really try and push forward adoption from a different angle, right? Like I'm really talking about sort of like corporate enterprise adoption is definitely something that I think now is more important than ever before, right? Because now is the time to actually push for it if you have a concrete product to push for, which we have. And I also think that there are some interesting ideas about how institutional DeFi can play out, especially if you think about everything that's been happening with the regulation. Right, so I think there's a general re-shifting happening in the market, and I think we at Iota we're in a very good spot right now to position ourselves. So one of the biggest announcements as part of this sort of like re-shifting of the market has been the announcement, I think it was last week, where we announced our intention and sort of like the progress that we have been making on repurposing the Iota Foundation. If you think about Iota, right, the primary entity that you associate with Iota is the Iota Foundation. It's a German nonprofit. It's where we like most of the development around Iota, especially the core, is happening and has been happening for the longest time. And is also the entity that really has been pushing forward the adoption of Iota, primarily because it centers or it concentrates all the innovation in the ecosystem. And it really helped to be sort of like the point of contact for industry partners, for governments, and for those that want to build on top of Iota. And if you think about it in hindsight, the Iota Foundation was really necessary for Iota to even be able to stand where we are today. Because without the Iota Foundation, Iota would have never matured. It would have never gotten to this phase, to this stage where we are at today. So the foundation was really this incubation ground, right? Which helped to mature us as individuals. It helped to mature the project, and it also helped to mature the technology and the ecosystem, because there's no denial that Iota in the early days was kind of useless to build on. And now we're in a very different position, right? If you think about what's happening now, is that now we basically have tokenization and we have smart contracts coming on Iota, right? So that means that anybody, without asking for permissions, without actually asking for recommendations or help, can build anything on top of Iota. There's nobody that is in control. There's nobody that is sort of dictating what should be built and what should not be built. And I think in this next phase that we are entering now with the starters upgrade, we at the Iota Foundation have also been asking ourselves, like, what is the purpose of the foundation? The purpose of the foundation is not to grow to become the next Microsoft and have tens of thousands of employees that are doing everything from technology development to technical sales to doing customer service and all of that. The purpose of Iota is to effectively decentralize everything, right? That starts with the technology, removing the coordinator, having the leaderless consensus, and it ends with the entire governance around Iota. And now is sort of the best time to really sort of, decentralize the Iota Foundation. And so to summarize what we have been working on, right? So what we have been working on is, first of all, we wanted to define what is the foundation best at and what is sort of like its most important asset. And the most important asset of the foundation is the research and engineering that we have been doing for the last, 5-7 years. And we should really double down on the R&D around Iota to make sure that the Iota protocol and all of the sort of layer 2 solutions that are being built on top of it are like part of a bigger architecture that is very competitive in this market, right? So the Iota Foundation has to really focus on being an R&D organization first and foremost. All of the other work that we have been doing over the last few years, primarily around the adoption of Iota, right? Working with big companies, working on solutions, working on government grants, and all of that will be moved into either spin-offs, right? Where people in the organization, like the leaders in the organization, are setting up these for-profit ventures to commercialize these projects, or these projects are being handed over to some of our key partners so that the foundation itself can really retain the focus around R&D. So that's really the biggest news around decentralizing the Iota Foundation, right? So really focus on R&D, and the rest is being done by other entities. And one important thing that we have been talking about for quite some time is that everything around the ecosystem support, the ecosystem growth, will no longer be done by the foundation itself, but it will now be done by a Swiss association. So we will hopefully have that set up by the end of July. And the Swiss association will then manage part of the treasury. And we also set up in a sort of way where it will invest into the ecosystem, so that we basically grow everything around Iota. We're also thinking about some ideas on how we can involve the community in this ecosystem association. There's definitely going to be some untangled voting on how all of you can participate to allocate the funding of this association. Now we'll share more about this as we move along. I think overall this has been overdue decision by us. It was something that other ecosystems have been doing for a long time. Like if you think about Ethereum, the Ethereum Foundation is sort of like one of the least important entities in the Ethereum ecosystem, because all of the adoption use cases are being pushed by ecosystem projects, right? For-profit startups, dApps, and so on and so forth. Cosmos also has a similar structure where they have the Interchain Foundation, and then they have some dedicated entities that do different responsibilities and functions in the ecosystem. And I think now with Iota, we are doing the same thing, where it's not about having everything in one organization and trying to achieve too many things at once in one organization, but really effectively decentralizing it and handing over these responsibilities to the community and to the ecosystem, right? One important point to mention as well is we have been working on this for the last 6 months. Obviously, because of the market conditions, we are sort of in a position where we want to really accelerate this decision. So this restructuring of the foundation has also means that some people in the foundation are no longer part of it. So we also had to sadly let some people go. But ultimately, most of the people will be going into different entities that we are right now setting up right now. So what we will be doing as we move along is we will share more information with all of you so that you can also be up to date on what is happening with these spin-offs. So far, I think the feedback was pretty good, right, with the spin-offs. And I think many people realize that it's really like a necessary move for us as well. So onto community and ecosystem. I don't think I've actually mentioned this yet, but we officially have a community treasury. So I think this has been in the work for over a year now, right? Since the Chrysalis upgrade. And the community was basically like empowered with making this decision whether to use some of the unclaimed funds from the previous upgrades of Iota since its inception, to use those funds for a treasury. So it's sort of like a DAO treasury. And ultimately, the decision was 82% in favor and 17%, 7.2 against. And I think this was really a big success. It was also the first time that we have done voting in Firefly. And I think now in this next step, I think this is actually a screenshot of the vote. Right, I think as part of this next step, the community is thinking about how to actually operationalize this DAO. So there's some thinking about where to set up a legal entity and stuff like that. But overall, I think this is really a great first step, because only if we involve all of you more into the governance around Iota, I think we get more different viewpoints, more different opinions. And I think overall, the project becomes more resilient, right? We have to remove this dependency that only the Iota Foundation is here to push forward the project. I think all of you are in a position where all of you should be in a position where you can write a proposal and have it seen by others in the community, have it discussed by others in the community, and then ultimately it should be voted on, right? And if it has merit, if it has really benefits that the entire community sees, it should be like acted on, right? So we're starting to work on this governance with the governance forum first and foremost. We also have the governance around the code, right? The protocol itself with the tip process. And here's one example where Kapi proposed to actually increase the token supply of Shimmer, right? And so I think that is a very interesting proposal, so that the community actually has access funding to invest into the Shimmer ecosystem and its growth. So obviously we want to support more and more of these initiatives, and I can really encourage all of you to engage in the governance forum. So let's talk about Shimmer. Over the last few months, what we have been focused on first and foremost is the Stardust upgrade. So just to reiterate, right, Stardust is a native tokenization, so you can mint your own tokens on the protocol, including NFTs, so that they're feeless, right? It's output types, so you can actually sort of like conditionally program your transactions, like for example, having time locks, or having, for example, an output type that if a transaction is not being, like a recipient doesn't accept the transaction, the money actually comes back, right? So you cannot lose your money, so to say, anymore if you send it to a wrong address and stuff like that. So we are including these powerful features on layer one. In addition to that, we are obviously including sort of limitless potential with smart contracts on layer two. And that includes EVM compatible smart contracts, right? So you can actually port over your Solidity code. So we have really been focused on making Iota Web3 ready. Right now we are in the final stages of this upgrade. So the community has already been testing. So the X teams has already had access to the code. By the way, it's all public on GitHub. So if you're brave, you can actually try it out yourself already. But there's been a lot of testing with the X teams, and over the next couple of weeks, within the July timeframe, we're going live with the beta, so that everybody has access to sort of like this Shimmer beta version. And so you can play around with the tokenization part, and you can also experiment with the with the smart contracts on layer 2. All right. After we've done the Shimmer beta network, probably after a couple of weeks, if there's been no big like problems with the network, we would then launch the Shimmer network, right? So there's no time frame on that yet. Obviously, you have to keep in mind that we have August, where most of you will probably be on holiday as well. But I think we are getting very, very close to Shimmer. And what is most exciting for me is actually what has been happening in the ecosystem. Because even though the beta isn't really ready yet, we already have close to 60 projects that are going to launch on top of Shimmer, right? And these are like the publicly known projects. There's probably like another 10 to 20 that we are speaking to that will announce their involvement over the next couple of weeks as well. And in addition to that, there's then all the other established dApps from the other ecosystems that are then also going to support Shimmer. So I think with Shimmer, we should be off to a very good start. And this is the first time that all of us here are exposed to DeFi, are exposed to tokenization. And I think it will be a wild experience, just being able to see how people create stuff and how you can participate in it, right? And I really want to participate in DAOs, right? Like do some crazy experiments with it. And that's really what Shimmer is for, right? Where we can have this innovation testbed to experiment and to play around. So if you want to get updates on what is happening on the engineering side, I can encourage you to read engineering updates. That should include most of the information around what the bottlenecks are and what is happening. Firefly is also already being tested, right? Alpha tested. And overall, we're making good progress. And I think we'll have some good testing to do over the next couple of weeks where all of you will be part of. So I think that's on the Shimmer side, right? Shimmer, we're preparing the beta. It will happen within July, most likely, right? According to the current schedule. And what we're working on after that is we'll do as much testing as possible, because we always need to make sure that Shimmer is secure and safe. And only after we're confident with it, we will then launch the Shimmer network, and we'll then launch the Shimmer token with the right exchange partners. So that's on the starters on the Shimmer side. What we have been working on with Assembly actually is really thinking through how we should structure the network in a way where we really future-proof Iota more. Because what we've been thinking about so far is something called optimistic rollups. So there you basically have a fraud proof that gets published on the layer 1 to validate the transactions on the layer 2, right? It's similarly to how optimism works on Ethereum or Arbitrum, but obviously in this Iota context. While that is very exciting, we sort of realized that the future looks very differently in the sense that zero knowledge rollups are really sort of progressing quickly. And what Angelo has been working on with his team, and they've really done a phenomenal job here, is studying zero knowledge technologies, right? Specifically zero knowledge rollups, and how they can be applied in the context of Iota and Assembly. So I can really highly encourage all of you to follow Angelo and to read his insightful Twitter threads here. But what we're working on at the moment is a sort of proposal on how we are going to restructure the whole narrative and the whole sort of architecture around Assembly to future-proof it and really make it more relevant in the zero knowledge context. Because with that, I think we really greatly leverage the unique features of Iota and of the DAG, right? So that's something really exciting that we have been working on. Obviously, we haven't been able to share it with you guys yet, because it's also a high-risk endeavor, so to say, because we really need to assess the feasibility of zero knowledge rollups. But I think at this point, we are really at the stage where we're getting more confidence in this path. So read his thread. If you have any questions about zero knowledge, roll-ups, or what we have been working on, just join our Discord. I think most of the discussions are in the Tangle Math channel. So check it out, right? And participate in the discussions. And related to that, maybe my last point before the AMA, is Hans's post. And Hans really does a phenomenal job in like defining this technical vision of Iota and really defining these unique features that Iota has. And what we are building really is something not just for crypto, but it's really something that is a technology for humanity, right? And he last time he really spoke about the consensus, right? The untangle voting. And now we are thinking this a step further on what to do with the congestion control and what to do with mana, right? Making Iota a protocol where we also have a sort of replication token in the native protocol, so it can be used for different services in the ecosystem, like for example voting, and for example also doing different identity services, like for example having an Iota name service, and those type of discussions. So I think there's a very interesting pro-contra argument happening right now with the different congestion controls, and we are internally like validating the different paths. And once we obviously have more validation there, we're going to share it with the community. But I can highly encourage all of you to read his blog post, so you also understand what we are sort of thinking about and what we are discussing internally. So I think with that, we can move to the AMA. Let's go here. I must say, I never use Reddit outside of the AMAs. So it's kind of something new. Okay, let's start. Can you give a better overview of which staff areas are affected by the reorganization of the IEF? It was mostly oriented around projects that no longer make like nice to have projects, right? Where it's like about experimenting about different things that might no longer be relevant in this market. And mostly it was really about market adoption, right? People that have been working with big companies and governments and stuff like that, because it doesn't make sense that the Iota Foundation does these things, right? The Iota Foundation cannot commercialize a for-profit solution because we are a nonprofit, right? And so it was really mostly about everything related to the adoption of Iota. And it's not that these people were let go, it's that these people are basically moving to a different organization or to different entities to further pursue the projects that they've been doing, right? At the end of the day, it's all about focusing, like repurposing the Iota Foundation to really focus on R&D first and foremost, because that is the biggest asset that we have, and we have so much more to achieve there, right? And so having this clear focus is really crucial. Who will lead the newly established organizations? It depends on the organization, right? There's different people within the Iota Foundation who are obviously clearly like CEOs/leaders who are now taking on this responsibility to establish and lead these entities. And obviously, as they're being set up, we will share that more with the community. The foundation, like maybe just for clarity, the foundation only will have a minority stake in these entities because we are not interested in having subsidiaries. And again, having subsidiaries for a nonprofit is kind of a pain in the ass as well. And so all of these will be independent organizations with the foundation only having a minority stake. With the new structure, will it be possible for Iota to do marketing? What do you have in mind? Yes, especially with the Swiss organization that we are setting up right now, we have much less restriction with what we can do with our funding, also how we can grow the ecosystem. What do I have in mind? Honestly, marketing is something where I don't want to do what other projects have done with sponsoring soccer, like football teams, Formula One and stuff like that. I think that's a huge waste of money. I want to do more marketing around events or marketing around developer education or sponsoring hackathons and stuff like that. I think we should do a lot. Like if we do any marketing, it should be focused around developers, right? So that we acquire more developers into our ecosystem. And those developers can then build applications that then do advertising, right? And stuff like that. But the foundation at Iota itself shouldn't do stuff like that. How close are we to the Shimmer release? The next phase is pretty clear, right? The beta release. What then happens is that we will have a couple of weeks of testing. And then once the testing has given us sufficient insights, the network itself will launch. So there's no time frame yet on the actual network launch, but from following on GitHub and from just participating in the testing, I think we're obviously very close. Are you satisfied with the current algorithm for Coresite, or are there still many pieces of the puzzle missing? I think overall we are like really 90% there right now. And I also see this excitement within the foundation, right? Because there's always people that don't agree with the solution, and that has always been the case. But now we're really sort of converging to a stage where more and more people are getting really excited about the consensus, first of all, but also really about the holistic solution that we have. I think the last major points that we have are around the congestion control, where we have these current debates of sort of this idea of manaverse, where you burn the mana, or the idea of mana one, where you attain it and then it expires if you don't utilize it after a certain time. Those answers we should have within the next couple of weeks as well. So that's really crucial, because it obviously defines how the protocol can be used, the user experience and stuff like that. So we are working on finalizing that. And then I think the last missing piece there is incentives, right? What are the incentives of using the protocol? How can we utilize certain type of, I don't know, inflation or certain type of incentive structures to reward participants and to reward honest behavior? So I think we're having some interesting discussions around that. Once we have some more clarity on the options, we will obviously also publish that so that everybody can participate in that discussion. And obviously, before we make any sudden moves, we will involve the community. What do you say to the recent article by Hans, respectively, that his visions were not realized? First of all, I think it's an excellent article, and we have been discussing this with Hans for the last 2 years, right? And ultimately, many of his ideas have converged with the other ideas, which led to better ideas being implemented, so to say, right? The current idea around the congestion control with mana burn is something where everybody's very excited for it, but it's simply about having more validation of the idea, right? Simulating it and proving that it's secure. And then most likely we will have a clear option of which solution is superior, right? And I think that's really something that we will then work on. So that's what I meant with getting more clarity on that. I don't think his visions were not realized. Obviously, there's always, like, in any organization, there's always like these endless debates. And especially, I think in an organization like the Iota Foundation, where we are a very open, flat hierarchy culture, you really have to prove your idea, so to say. And I think Hans has done a tremendous job in proving all of his ideas so far. And I think with this one as well, we will see more progress on it being implemented as well. So obviously, it's always like differing opinions and viewpoints. But at the end of the day, all of us have the same intentions, right? To make Iota the best DLT out there and really make Iota competitive. And I'm very confident now more than ever before that we're going to achieve that. What's the current situation with Stardust EPSI Phase 2B? So I think Stardust I already answered. I don't think you have to go into that again, right? Beta network, The Shimmer beta should be around the corner, TLDR. EPSI phase 2B. Actually, I think yesterday we had the presentation to EPSI, right, to the board there, where we presented our solution. So they gave us feedback to that. We submitted the hundreds of pages of documents to them. So they are reviewing it right now. I think over the next couple of weeks, we're going to hear the feedback from them. I'm not sure if it will be end of July or end of August, but probably by September, we're going to know how if we have won or if we are progressing to the next phase. We obviously right now internally reviewing everything, and EPSI is one of those strategic projects that will most likely be continued by the Iota Foundation, where we are involving other entities, obviously in like operationalizing it, but we're quite interested in how it can drive adoption. So let's see what the European Commission says about our submission, and then we will know more. Which parts are still missing to release Shimmer? So first of all, there's still more work to be done on all the tooling and the libraries, right, which also includes the documentation. So all of that is being finalized right now, so that builders can easily build on top of Shimmer. That also includes Exchange integration documents. Firefly is right now in the alpha phase. So if you're part of the X teams, you can already play around with it. So with Firefly specifically, there's a very important part where you basically claim your Shimmer tokens and like from your Iota seed, right? And that's sort of like that's a very special instruction, because then you need to make a transaction. So it's like a claim transaction. And with that claim transaction, you then basically claim your Shimmer tokens, right? So that's a very security sensitive component that is being tested right now. Or it's still like, I think it's still being finished, the implementation, and then afterwards we're going to do a lot of testing. So which part is still missing to release? Smart contracts as well, right? The team has been doing a lot of great work there on getting it ready for the Shimmer beta. So most likely we will ship the Shimmer beta together with smart contracts or very soon thereafter. We're using a sort of customized version of the EVM, which is more performant, right? Which also means that there's some complexity involved in making it fully compatible. But we're finalizing it right now. So hopefully that should be ready for all of you to test it out as well. And then lastly, the most important part that is missing is doing lots and lots of public testing, right? I think with the Shimmer EVM being deployed and with the Shimmer beta being launched, we need to make sure that we really do a lot of testing around Shimmer. And then once we've done enough testing, we can really move forward and progress from there. But other than that, it's not like any major software pieces are missing at the moment, which is good, right? My question is, when are the IF going to make some sense of the convoluted mess they've created in flip-flopping between ideas, solutions, plans, and priorities? This is a serious question, as everything has become so nebulous and lacking in cohesion and direction that from the outside, it looks like a total shambles. I've been relatively close to this project for 4 years, and I have zero clue what the IF are trying to do at this point. I also feel like Shimmer and Assembly are veiled fork attempts that devalue and dilute my Iota holdings, with corporate third-party interests put first. That's a very fair question. Let me answer it, right? If you think about Iota, the vision and what we're trying to achieve is still the same, right? When we founded Iota, there was two major things that we really looked to achieve. The first one is to prove that we can build a superior technology through blockchain, right? Since we started Iota in 2015, we always believed that DAX, right, with the Tangle, is much, much superior to like the sequential architecture of a blockchain. And since 2015, we've been working on improving and redefining this piece of technology, right? We started out with a lot of big visions of what Iota is capable of with the machine economy and with real-world adoption. And we had very low technical deliveries, right? We have to be very frank about that, because Iota had a very strong vision, but it had nothing to show for in that regard initially, right, when we started. Now we had to balance this a lot more by really having a clear technical direction of what we're trying to achieve with Iota and where we're like what we should really prioritize, right? And that is why the Chrysalis upgrade was so crucial, because with Chrysalis we basically came to the table and said, hey, we made a bunch of mistakes with the ledger itself, with the way that we had Winternet signatures and like one-time addresses, right, and stuff like that. We removed all the bad parts and we really focused on having a protocol that focuses on validating the tangle itself. We're not here to prove ternary. We're not here to prove that quantum computers are no threat to crypto. We're here to prove that the tangle is better than a blockchain, right? And nothing has changed about that, right? That's still the primary objective of what we're trying to do. Now, what has evolved since Chrysalis is our realization that the only way that we can really move forward is by having tangible adoption on the Iota mainnet. We're not here to build an enterprise blockchain solution. We're not here to have private tangles for governments. We're here to build Iota, right? Iota as the mainnet, Iota as the one and only. And in order to achieve that, we need to have utility on the protocol, right? Because with Chrysalis, while it was really a huge milestone for us, I didn't add any more functionality, right? You can still do data and you can still do payments. Now, what we have coming up now, which we've been working on for the past year, is this Stardust upgrade, which is the biggest utility upgrade in Iota's history, right? Where we have tokenization, NFTs, and smart contracts for the first time. So all of that is coming to Iota so that we can really establish the Iota network and the Iota token within our ecosystem and also within the broader crypto ecosystem. Now, the next phase after that is Iota 2.0, right? Where it's about, first of all, effectively decentralizing the protocol by having this leaderless consensus, which we have been working on for the past 4 or 5 years, and by really building a new sort of DLT architecture that can host layer 2 scaling solutions, right, with rollups, but that is also very uniquely positioned to sort of take on Ethereum, take on Bitcoin, and take on some of these other protocols to really become the settlement layer for these decentralized economies, right? So just to summarize, right, like the first primary objective is to prove that our technology is better than blockchains. And that is really what we have proven by getting rid of all the bad things with Chrysalis, by working on Stardust to really have utility on Iota, and so that all of you can build on top of Iota, and by getting very close with Iota 2.0 so that we have a fully decentralized network and have a much superior consensus algorithm to anything out there, right? So that is still the objective, and that has never changed. Now, on the other side, what we've been working on is really like pushing for real-world adoption of crypto, right, of Iota. Because while NFTs are exciting, while DeFi is exciting, what really excites us the most is working with big industry players and getting them to adopt our technology, right? Because at the end of the day, if we cannot prove that crypto has value in the real world, it might not be sustainable after all, right? If we're just all trading and playing with each other, we have no further growth outside of our ecosystem. So what we with the Iota Foundation have really been focused on for the last 5 years, right, was to prove that there's real world adoption out there for crypto. And I think that is really where a lot of the confusion also comes from, because while we started out with this very bold vision of the machine economy and the Internet of Things and Iota being the backbone of it, I think as we progressed over the years, the realization is that Iota isn't just for IoT. Iota isn't just to build the machine economy. I think what we should really realize is that Iota is like this digital infrastructure layer where we then have different economies being built on top of it, right? And one of those economies is obviously machine economy, right? IoT, but there's so many other digital decentralized economies like DeFi and so on and so forth. So we had to adapt our technology to the realization of where adoption is actually going to come from. Right? And while enterprise adoption is very exciting and we firmly believed in it and we still firmly believe in it, we might just be too early. Right? We also have to be very frank with ourselves that maybe these companies need more time. Maybe they really need to have ready-made solutions. Right? And that's why this restructuring of the foundation is so important, because the foundation is not meant to build solutions. Our ecosystem, all of you are meant to build solutions. And these solutions we can then bring to the partners, to the corporations, and then sell it to the market. So we had to adjust ourselves. And I think overall, now more than ever before, we really have a much clearer vision of the future. And what we're working on at the moment is to really put it down into paper so that everybody can also understand how our vision has evolved over time and where we really stand today with what we're trying to achieve. And so we're working on updating the entire Iota website, actually. So it's less about the industry, it's more about the technology and the architecture that we have. And if you want the comparison, I really think that Iota is evolving in a similar way to Cosmos, where you have one primary settlement layer that really empowers others to build their own layer 2 solutions on top of it, right? So Iota, similarly to Ethereum, Cosmos, and others, is positioning itself to become the main settlement layer for these decentralized networks. And I think that's a very exciting path forward for us. And, strategically, if you think about it, where we stand today, we are probably a couple of months behind the rest of the market, so to say, right? While everybody was really benefiting from the DeFi boom of the last, 2 years, we have done the difficult work of really repurposing the protocol itself, right? Really adjusting it to the demands and to the utility of the ecosystem. And I think now with Shimmer getting ready, we are really able to take on the market as well. And so the thinking is always like, how do you leapfrog if you're actually behind, so to say, in this very fierce competition? And also, you need to have better technology, which we firmly believe we have, especially after all the research that we have been doing. And second of all, we really need to focus on building a decentralized ecosystem, because if we just build everything, nobody will actually feel that they are responsible to participate, right? To do anything. And I think with smart contracts coming out, all of you will be empowered to build up Iota and get it back to its prime, so to say. So other than that, I don't think that flopping between ideas is bad. I think what's worse is being stuck to a bad idea and not being willing to change it, right? If there's anything that I really want us to be capable of, it's to be able to be humble about how we operate Iota and to be very adaptive to the market, right? Because crypto changes so quickly. We have to really be able to adapt ourselves to these changing demands of the ecosystem to make sure that Iota wins. So ultimately, we're here to win, right? Nothing short of that. Next question. First of all, how can I understand the blog post by Hans? Hans Morgs, I already explained it, right? This is a different way to do the congestion control in Iota 2.0. So his idea really revolves around having, instead of mana going down if you don't utilize it, mana would be burned similarly to a fee in a usual network, right? So you hold your Iota tokens, you generate mana, and this mana is then being utilized to pay for your transactions. And the vision of what Hans is proposing here goes beyond just the congestion control, right? The vision is that mana really becomes sort of intrinsic to the protocol and to the ecosystem, so that it can be used for different things, like having identities, right? So important to what we want to build and what we want to enable, like being able to do governance in a different way, and airdrops and stuff like that. So it's a really, really exciting set of ideas that make Iota very unique, right? So we're right now looking at this, and hopefully hopefully we'll have more of a security assessment or validation of it, and then we can also think about how we can integrate it. It's the interesting part is like what Hans is proposing with Mana here is very similarly to what Vitalik has been working on with the idea of soul-bound tokens. And if you guys have time, I can recommend you to read his white paper, focus on social media. But if we implement Mana in this way as Hans is proposing it, it basically is it will be the first protocol that implemented soul-bound tokens in production. Right? So I think that's pretty exciting. Can you give a brief overview of why this proposal was ignored and what the difference between Hans' suggestions and the status quo is? It's not that the ideas were ignored, I would say. I think it's really deprioritized is the right word, because there's a constant pressure to deliver, right, and also meet timelines. And so the team was really just focused right now on finishing the current prototype, which still utilizes the old congestion control. We've been working on sort of reshuffling those priorities over the last couple of weeks so that the Manaverse idea is going to be assessed much more closely. And it's already being implemented, by the way, so that you can also have like an A/B comparison between the two. And the status quo is basically the Mana that you've been reading on in the blog posts, right? Where you generate the Mana and then it basically decays over time. And the congestion control itself is a lot more complicated, where you basically have allocated time slots. But I don't think it's worthwhile to go into the exact details because we're still like assessing which one we're going with. Can we understand the Stardust upgrade as the better alternative to Hans' suggestion, or does that have nothing to do with each other? It has nothing to do with each other, right? Like Stardust is really like the utility upgrade, and Hans is talking about Iota 2.0 and the congestion control there. How should this suggestion by Hans be classified? It's like part of his vision of the future, and I think it very closely aligns with what we want to achieve with Iota, right? Like Hans's vision of Iota, I mean. So you can think about this as him sharing a very exciting idea with the community as well, to get everybody's input and feedback on it. And then the next steps we'll obviously discuss in the foundation, and then we'll take it from there. But I think many people in the community and also in the foundation are very excited about it. What is the status of assembly? On Discord, it was said that assembly in its current form is just an idea and needs a lot more research. So what is needed for assembly to evolve from the idea to real product? Also when? So if you think about assembly, right, it utilizes the Iota Smart Contracts Framework, ISC. So that framework right now is being validated with Stardust and with Shimmer. So whenever you hear the Shimmer EVM, that utilizes the Iota Smart Contracts Framework, and the Shimmer EVM is actually sort of like a beta version of assembly, right? Because assembly is supposed to be launched in phases. The first phase would be a proof of authority chain, like we're going to do on Shimmer and the Shimmer EVM. And then the next phase would be a decentralized network of validators and of different smart contract chains. Now, the first phase is very clear, right? Doing the proof of authority chain, that is already near completion. The next phase around fully effectively decentralizing it, I think that is where we have had some internal debates on which option is more feasible, right? Either we really invest our time and resources to build like a optimistic roll-up network, so to say, with validators and staking and all of that, or we really assess how Iota and assembly fit into this whole vision around zero-knowledge proofs and zero-knowledge roll-ups. And so the work that Angelo has been doing really goes around answering this fundamental question. And we're still assessing this path right now on which one to choose, and also how to effectively use our unique selling points better. So we're working on finalizing the proposal. I think after the summer break, we're going to share more about how this like fully decentralized vision of assembly is going to work and how it's going to look like. But right now it's being worked on, right, with the first version of the Shimmer EVM. Let's do like 2 more questions. How will the spinning off of Firefly impact the governance voting? Should third-party, potentially centralized commercial entities have an input into governance of the protocol? So I think the governance itself is not something that Firefly has an impact on, right? What we are going to do with an upcoming Firefly release is that anybody can actually publish their governance vote into Firefly. So it's not that the Firefly team has control over who gets to publish a vote, but anybody is able to do it, right? And so yeah, and by the way, we also have smart contracts where anybody can also participate and use the smart contracts to do the governance. Is the IF now moving away from industry adoption at its core and focusing on being another protocol building DeFi tools? First of all, the IF is not doing any adoption at all anymore, right? The foundation itself focuses on R&D, and the adoption itself is going to be driven by the ecosystem itself. And we already have like a few dozen corporate partnerships that are very close and that are going to advance further, right? And what we also have is ecosystem partners like Philancor and so on that are really working with industry partners on IOTA solutions, right? So we as the IOTA Foundation, we don't want to judge how the adoption is happening anymore. What I can say is that we will obviously continue to work on corporate adoption and making sure that crypto and IOTA gets adopted in the real world. Obviously, there's going to be a big focus on DeFi and NFTs and tokenization at the moment, but it doesn't mean that we'll let go of the other stuff. Right? How does the IF propose to build sustainable revenue? Currently, it seems the IF are heavily reliant on the treasury funds and likely VC investment routes. Does the IF not plan to build revenue-making activities to help sustain the IF for the foreseeable future? If so, what? I mean, it's something that we've been trying since the inception of IOTA, right? And obviously, because we are a nonprofit and limited in our capabilities and what we can actually do, it's very difficult to build up a revenue stream unless you really have a business already. Obviously, with these spin-offs, the foundation will also get a stake in them. So if they're successful, it should help the foundation, because we've never really had the pre-mine with IOTA, where the foundation got a token allocation. We need to rethink this completely. Obviously, because we have a vibrant DeFi ecosystem that will hopefully launch on Shimmer first and then later on IOTA, we can also think about a way whereby the foundation, through its treasury, will be able to earn yield. Right? Let's say we have $50 million worth of tokens which earn 10% yield per year. So that means that we have potentially $5 million of revenues that we can then utilize and reinvest into the operations of the foundation. So I think if there's one sustainable path for the foundation, is basically utilizing its treasury to earn yield on it, which can then be used for the operations. We also have to keep in mind that the foundation does public goods development, right? There's nothing to profit from on the protocol. We can't have fees that go to the foundation and stuff like that. So we have to be a little bit creative. Standardization under the OMG management group was put on hold until IOTA 2.0 is finalized. Furthermore, there were standardization efforts for streams and identity. Is there still any progress in this regard? No, standardization was completely deprioritized at the moment, simply because there's too much stuff to finish first. So once we finish them, we can actually think about restarting the standardization efforts, right? How is this bear market affecting the IOTA Foundation? Can we expect further delays caused by this price drop? As I said already in the beginning, right? For us, the bear market is a much more exciting part, the much more exciting environment to build in, because there's less hype, there's less things that look like they're important or that should be prioritized, right? So it's better for building. Always in terms of the sustainability of the foundation, it shortens the runway because all of our assets are in IOTA and they are in the treasury of the foundation. So we've had to work on some restructuring and also financing options. But I think overall, we should be in a good position at the moment. In terms of delays, I don't expect any delays because of the price drop. Like, it doesn't really affect us. Let's do one more question. Could you comment on what is the current situation with the new EU crypto AML regulations and how it will affect Iota and its ecosystem? So that's a really good question, right? We always knew that regulation is coming. With the new regulations that have been sort of approved in the EU with the MiCA regulation, also with the transfer of funds regulations, it means that there will be stricter AML compliance, right? Especially like the transfer of funds regulation primarily impacts centralized exchanges, so that they actually have to really prove where the funds are coming from. It doesn't necessarily impact us at Iota. It does mean that the entry barrier to crypto is getting higher, but at the same time, it also means that it's much more easier for regulated entities to accept crypto now. So I think there's always the pro and the contra. The MiCA regulation, which is going to go into effect in 2024, has more significant impact on the foundation, where the foundation will be classified as an issuer, so to say. It also puts some restrictions on stablecoin issuance, which is something to be aware of. But other than that, with MiCA, we only expect more positives than negatives, right? So we knew that regulation was coming, and I think this is really a good time to sort of fully utilize the benefits of Iota, right? Because we have a proven track record working with governments, working with big companies. So I think now with these regulations, much larger and participants are able to actually join crypto and be part of some kind of structure, right? Whether it will be institutional DeFi, whether it will be KYC liquidity pools. I think the way that the future looks like is that there will be this sort of anonymous side of crypto, and then there will be this regulated side of crypto. Obviously, the objective is to be a part of both of them, because we can't judge and we shouldn't limit the potential. But I think regulation is really something that we are very much aware of, and where we're still assessing how that will also shape our adoption use cases. But I think we should really see regulation as an opportunity, because it also means that some of the unsustainable stuff is going to be washed out, and it's really more about having really proven business models, sustainable business models, to be part of the future, right? And because we are registered in Germany, we are a regulated nonprofit foundation, I think Iota should be in a good position there. So we will also increase our lobbying efforts. We'll increase our work that we're doing in Brussels. And we are very much aware of what's happening there and what is being proposed. So let's see what the next phase holds. So yeah, I think that was pretty much it for the AMA. Obviously, if you guys have questions, always you can always find me on Discord. I got a very nice gift when I was hiking in Südtirol. His name is Banana Joe. I always wonder why he's called Banana Joe. But we were hiking in Südtirol for 12 hours. And I got these beers. So once we launched the Shimmer network, I'll definitely down one of those beers. And he also gave me this piece of art made by his wife. So if you guys ever want to bribe me, you can always send some merchandise. I'll accept it. But I think overall, we know what's going to happen next, right? The Shimmer network will go into beta, and all of you can really participate in it. And some of the dApps can be deployed, and you can start experimenting with it. And after that, we're working to really launch Shimmer and the Shimmer token as soon as possible. And then afterwards, it will happen on Iota. And in the meantime, there's a lot to work on, right, with Iota 2.0 and the entire ecosystem around Stardust and around DeFi and dApps and stuff like that. So I think we'll have an exciting summer ahead of us. Maybe we'll do another session in August, so you can ask some more questions. So without further ado, enjoy your Wednesday evening. If you have any questions, ask me on Discord, ask me on Twitter, and I see you guys next time. Bye-bye.